Hey, good morning. People are just jumping on now, and I don't know how many people will be here today. There's a lot going on in the world, so thanks for showing up. I am excited to paint. I'm also a little grumpy, and I have to say that what I've noticed in my painting practice is I used to think if I was grumpy that I was going to make a lousy painting, but over time I've learned that kind of digging into that feeling of frustration or upset or rage sometimes really can help to help me stay connected to myself. And then I sort of use the process of painting as a vehicle for uh, that expression. So you don't have to have nice, calm, warm thoughts when you're painting. I think it works better when you're actually authentic and in the place that you're at. So um, I just, welcome you to class. Think you for being here. And I'm going to start today. You can see if you look at my demo, I'm going to pin that so I can see what's going on. I'm looking at a still life right now. It's basically right there of a skull with peonies. Um, I don't have color ink in my printer. I apparently have enough for this to turn a little bit fuchsia, but I'm okay with that. Uh, and really, from how I'm seeing it, the peonies are just as much as part of the subject I'll be painting as the skull. I almost wanted to paint just the flowers, but it wasn't enough for me today. And I tried putting a pelvis there. I tried a few different objects to try to figure out what was really drawing me in. And the flowers by themselves wasn't enough. And the pelvis didn't feel right. And now I'm back to this deer skull again. So, if you're tired of looking at bones, I'm sorry. I just think it works best if I sort of follow what I'm attracted to, and I encourage you to do that at home too. So, if you're like trying to paint things like I am at home, what I would say is actually try to pick one or two objects that you're interested in, because your time's precious, and anything you can do to make it worthwhile. At the same time, don't feel like it isn't okay just to paint some objects over and over again that you don't have a deep attachment to, because you're just working for you want to paint coffee mugs because coffee mugs are simpler and it helps you to break down the value in your head, and you're attracted to the practice versus the subject that you're looking at. That's totally fine too. So I'm gonna paint an underpainting. Then I'm gonna mix a color palette of I think we're gonna go red to green again today, but we're gonna use different pigments of yellow, blue, and red than we did last week. And once again, I encourage you, if you want to just to paint a color card with what you mix and it takes you longer to mix it than me, which I'm sure it will, that's enough if you don't feel like making a painting. You can see here today on my paper, this is just a leftover palette that I took a palette knife and scraped across some white paper with. So, and it was gessoed first. This is kind of busy. I like that sort of frenetic, almost staticky feeling in the background, and then it gets covered up as I layer in. So, if that's intimidating to you, then make your backgrounds a little smoother. But I would encourage you at some point to try to paint on a background that's not just white, because it'll add to your paint quality, and your painting will feel finished faster generally because you already have a whole layer of color or paint underneath. It doesn't work for everybody, but a lot of people find more success when they just don't have a blank white background to paint on. The other thing is I wouldn't normally print out a picture to work from, but if there's one there, I will jump back and forth between this and my still life. What I would say I did, there was a lot of distraction in the background. I have different cameras and tripods up, so I took on my phone the markup and I blacked out any distracting information, and I didn't bother going around these peony leaves and stems, but I'm going to be able to see the difference of that on the actual still life. But your markup or any kind of like writing tool or highlighting tool that you have on your camera, you can take pictures of the paintings that you're making and practice, like fill in a blue background. Sometimes you might not have that option on your camera and you can try it on your computer, but if you're techie enough and savvy, which I'm absolutely not, eventually you can kind of figure out how to play around with that. So if you're like looking at a still life or a painting, you're like, well, I don't like the brown color or the red color that's in the background, then you can use the markup tool on your camera to see what would it be like if I made it yellow or green, or just to see how those different color variations will bounce off what you already painted. So mostly I printed this up for you today. If I was just sitting here painting on my own, I wouldn't have gone to the trouble of it, but I wanted you to have a viewpoint of what I'm looking at. So just go like this and put this off to the side a little bit. Instead of using ultramarine blue for my underpainting, I'm going to make a mixture, a very dark mixture. So this will be, my black color. Today I'm using phthalo blue, burnt umber, and alizarin crimson hue. It makes a slightly warmer black instead of cool, and it's very deep color. The value is very dark, and I want to have that dark resist to go against the other colors that I have on here. So I'm just going to grab a Sharpie, I hope. There we go. And write that. Also, at some point today, I'll be bringing my palette mixing up closer to the screen, and it might be easier for you to read this then. So phthalo blue, burnt umber, and alizarin crimson. Now, it's doubtful that all of you have all of these colors, so I don't have the expectation that you're necessarily going to be painting or mixing along with that. If you only have ultramarine blue and burnt umber, that's an absolutely fine mixture for darks. I'm just sort of adding some new bells and whistles for anybody that's interested. So I'm going to try to put out equal amounts. And phthalo blue is a pretty intense color. This is the green shade. I don't always like it for color mixing, but I do like it when I want to create a value that kind of sinks in instead of bounces off. So just mix these. I'm trying to leave room on the rest of my palette for when I do the color mixing exercise in a little bit.